Welcome to the deep dive, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the wisdom. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a world that often feels, well, both powerful and a bit mysterious. Executive leadership.
hmm
What does it really take to lead at the absolute highest levels? It's definitely more than just the job title. It's this profound mix of skills, a certain mindset, and, a very deliberate way of tackling incredibly complex stuff.
Absolutely. And to help us really get our heads around this, we've got a pretty fascinating resource, actually. It's a set of 20 executive manager interview questions complete with sample answers.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it's almost like getting a direct line into how these top leaders actually think.
That's exactly it. So our mission for this deep dive, it isn't really just about prepping you for an interview, though, hey, it probably wouldn't hurt. But instead, we're using these questions, these expert responses, kind of like a master blueprint. We're going to dissect them, really try to understand the core competencies, the strategic thinking, and the actual leadership philosophies that define executive success. We're basically hunting for those nuggets of wisdom.
And hopefully by the end of this, you'll walk away with a much clearer picture of what's really driving those high-level decisions, how leaders navigate big changes, and, the essential qualities that shape how successful an organization is.
Yeah, getting behind the scenes of those defining moments. Okay, let's dive right in. Kicking things off with, well, the very core of leadership: vision, strategy, and personal style. The first question that really sets the stage is, what is your leadership style?
Right. And the sample answer talks about a participative style, but it's more nuanced than just saying, I listen to my team.
Okay.
It highlights this balance, this tightrope walk between involving the team in decisions, but also needing that decisiveness, that ability to make the call when things get urgent.
That flexibility sounds key.
It is. It's about fostering ownership, making people feel heard, but not getting bogged down when you need to act fast. That's a balancing act lots of leaders struggle with, I think.
That balance you mentioned, participative but decisive, that really is a tightrope, isn't it? I mean, have you seen leaders get stuck too long in trying to build consensus? Or maybe go too far the other way?
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. You see leaders who want everyone to agree, and they just miss opportunities. The market moves too fast.
Right.
And then conversely, you get the purely top-down leader, and that often just breeds resentment, People check out.
So what's the sign they've actually found that sweet spot, that equilibrium?
Well, it's not just what they say their style is, it's what you see. You see a team that feels genuinely heard, that contributes ideas, but you also see decisive action when needed. The proof is in the results. Really, you get faster execution and people are more engaged.
Okay, got it. So once a leader has that kind of internal compass, that flexible style, how do they then translate that into a clear roadmap for the whole organization? That's where I guess strategic planning comes in at the executive level. How does a leader approach something like strategic planning?
Well, the sample answer lays out a pretty structured approach. It starts with a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Standard stuff? Yeah.
Kind of. But at this level, it's not just listing them. It's about really digging deep, stress testing your assumptions against what's actually happening in the market, and understanding how these things connect, where your vulnerabilities might be.
Ah, okay. More rigorous.
Exactly. Then it moves to setting SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. But the crucial part here is involving key departments right from the start, getting that alignment across different parts of the business.
So it's not just the top team deciding in isolation.
Right. And it's definitely not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah.
The answer mentions quarterly reviews, checking progress, and making tactical adjustments along the way. You have to stay agile. Okay, so the vision's there, the strategy's mapped out, but how do you get everyone else on board? How do executives actually get their teams to not just understand, but really buy into that direction, effectively communicating vision and strategy to your teams?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. And the methods mentioned go beyond just the usual town halls or one-on-ones. Those are there too.
Okay.
It emphasizes using strategic documents, sure, but also, interestingly, using storytelling to connect emotionally.
Ah, storytelling. That's interesting.
Isn't it? That seems to be the secret sauce, making the vision feel real, giving it a kind of heartbeat so people connect with the why, not just the what. And the core message has to be consistent, clear, repeated at every level. Consistent, clear messaging, top to bottom. Got it. But even with that clarity, there's this fundamental tension executives always face, isn't there? Keeping the lights on today versus building for tomorrow. How do they manage that challenge of balancing short-term performance with long-term growth?
Oh, yeah. That's the perennial tightrope walk, isn't it? That
Yeah,
pull between what you need now and what you need to build for the future.
exactly.
The answer here talks about setting both short-term KPIs, key performance indicators, and those longer-term strategic goals. It's not just tracking two sets of numbers, though.
Right.
It's about smart resource allocation, making sure that the decisions you make day to day are actually lining up with where you want to be in, say, 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge, honestly, that everyone faces in their work to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, listening right now, balance those immediate pressures with your future goals?
It's a great question, that constant calibration. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about navigating change, people, and performance. Leading through a major transformation, that's a huge test for any executive. Tell us about leading a major change initiative.
So the example given is this digital transformation at a fictional XYZ Corp. They apparently automated 70% of manual processes, which sounds impressive on its own.
Yeah, 70% is huge.
It is, but the real takeaway wasn't just the tech. It was the leadership process behind it. They got stakeholders involved really early, got that buy-in. They communicated constantly what was happening, why it mattered, and they provided proper training.
So managing the people side of the tech chain.
Precisely. And this whole approach led to a reported 40% productivity increase. It's a great example of how a technical project is actually fundamentally about leadership, transparency, and supporting your people through the change.
That's a powerful example of doing change right. But even with the best plans, conflict happens, especially when you have strong personalities on a senior team. How do executives handle conflict between senior team members?
Yeah, that's inevitable, isn't it? The approach described is very impartial and problem-focused.
Okay.
The idea is to listen carefully to both sides, but to focus on the underlying business issue, not the personal clash. Then, mediate a solution that's best for the organization's goals, not just satisfying egos.
Right, keeping it objective.
Exactly. And critically, it doesn't end there. The answer mentions following up to make sure the resolution actually sticks and the issue doesn't just resurface. It's about de-escalating, finding common ground aligned with the business, and ensuring it holds.
Makes sense. So once you've navigated maybe some conflict, realigned the team, how do you proactively go about building strong executive teams in the first place? It sounds like more than just hiring smart people.
Oh, definitely. It starts with hiring, yes, but hiring for both competence and cultural fit.
Yeah.
Recognizing that someone brilliant might still disrupt the team if they don't fit the dynamic.
Ah, the cultural fit piece.
Yeah. And then it's about actively creating an environment where open communication happens, where there's mutual respect, and importantly, promoting leadership development within that team. It's like a continuous investment in their collective strength and how well they work together.
That makes a lot of sense. But then there's the flip side, the really difficult part. Managing underperforming senior staff. That has to be one of the toughest executive responsibilities.
It absolutely is. And the approach described balances being humane with being firm. It starts with very direct, clear feedback, setting specific goals for improvement,
Okay.
and crucially offering support resources, coaching, whatever they might need to get back on track. However, if performance doesn't improve despite all that,
Then the tough call comes.
exactly, then the executive has to be prepared to make that difficult decision for the good of the organization. It comes down to accountability at that level.
And how does an executive know if all this effort, the team building, managing conflict, dealing with underperformance is actually paying off? How do you measure the success of your team?
Well, the answer suggests looking beyond just the bottom line, which I think is important. Yes, you track the core KPIs tied to business goals, financial targets, customer satisfaction, operational efficiency, all that,
The hard numbers.
the hard numbers.
Yeah.
But crucially, it also includes things like employee engagement and retention rates. Looking at that whole picture gives you a much better sense of the team's overall health and effectiveness, not just its output this quarter.
Right, a more holistic view. Okay, let's pivot again, this time towards driving business acumen and staying ahead of the curve. Executives are constantly juggling priorities. How do they approach prioritizing competing business objectives when, let's face it, everything probably feels urgent?
Yeah, that's the daily reality, isn't it? They don't just wing it, though, or they
Right,
shouldn't.
hopefully not.
Right. The key is prioritizing based on clear criteria, alignment with organizational goals, potential ROI, level of risk, and urgency. And they often use frameworks to help structure this.
Frameworks like what?
Well, the answer mentions things like the Eisenhower matrix,
Mm.
distinguishing urgent versus important, or using balanced scorecards to get that broader view of performance beyond just finance, helping align those priorities with the bigger strategy. It's about bringing structure to those high-pressure decisions.
Okay, structure is key. And closely linked to prioritizing is managing the money itself. What's the executive approach described for financial management and budgeting?
This particular approach mentions using zero-based budgeting.
Ah, zero base. Explain that a bit.
Sure. So instead of just tweaking last year's budget, zero-based budgeting means you essentially start from scratch each period. Every single dollar, every expense has to be rejustified based on current needs and strategic goals.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It is. But at the executive level, it's a really powerful strategic tool. It forces everyone to constantly align spending with what's most important right now. It drives accountability. They also mention regular variance reviews, checking actual spending against the budget, and working very closely with the finance teams.
That sounds incredibly disciplined, as you said. But discipline alone isn't enough today. How do executives actively drive innovation within their organization? It's easy to talk about, much harder to actually do.
True. It seems to be fundamentally about creating the right culture.
Culture, okay.
Yeah, actively encouraging people to experiment, supporting calculated risk-taking, recognizing that not every new idea will work, and that's okay. The answer even talks about celebrating both successes and smart failures, learning from what went wrong.
Learning from failure, right.
Exactly. And backing this up with real resources,
Yeah.
allocating budget specifically for R&D, maybe setting up innovation labs. It's an investment, really, in staying relevant long-term.
So, with all that internal focus on innovation, how does an executive then make sure the company as a whole stays competitive out there in the market?
It's about being proactive,
Hmm.
not reactive. Constantly keeping an eye on market trends, trying to anticipate shifts before they happen, investing in that innovation we just talked about, fostering a mindset of continuous improvement everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the response is also highlighted working really closely with R&D and marketing, making sure the innovation pipeline and the go-to-market strategy are tightly linked and ahead of the game.
Okay, staying ahead. But the world is also full of potential downsides. What about their risk management approach? How do they protect the organization?
The approach described sounds very proactive and data-driven. It
Mhm.
starts with identifying, assessing, and prioritizing risks early on, not waiting for something to blow up.
Right.
They involve cross-functional teams in planning how to mitigate those risks, bringing different perspectives, avoiding blind spots. And they use things like risk registers, which they review quarterly to keep track and adapt.
Quarterly reviews, okay?
Yeah, it ensures risk management isn't just a one-off exercise, but an ongoing process. What really stands out to me is that systemic approach involving lots of people. It embeds risk awareness across the organization.
That consistency and the cross-functional piece, yeah, that sounds really effective. Not just one person worrying about it.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move into learning from experience and looking outward. Executives inevitably face incredibly tough calls. Can you describe an example given of a difficult decision made as an executive?
Yes, the example was about downsizing a division because of budget cuts. This is where, empathy really has to meet those hard strategic choices.
Yeah, tough stuff.
Definitely. The executive in this example focused on transparency, being open about why it was happening, providing real support for the affected staff like outplacement services, but at the same time, restructuring operations smartly to keep the core capabilities the company needed for the future. It really shows leading with both head and heart in a crisis.
A difficult balance. And sometimes, even with the best intentions, things just don't work out. Tell us about the example of a failed initiative you led and what you learned. This is often where the deepest learning happens, right?
Absolutely. The example was launching a new product that ultimately underperformed because it hadn't had sufficient market testing beforehand.
Ouch.
Yeah. But the key lesson wasn't just it failed, it was why. It hammered home the value of robust pilot testing and doing proper postmortem reviews before you try to scale something new. It really highlights that learning from mistakes is just as vital as celebrating the wins, maybe even more so sometimes.
That's a critical insight. Now, here's a skill that's often overlooked but so important for executives. Managing up,
Yeah.
dealing effectively with board members or the CEO. How do the answers describe doing that?
It's really about strategic communication and alignment, providing clear, concise updates, not grounding them in detail, but focusing on what they care about most: ROI, risk, strategic progress.
Straight to the point.
Exactly. and anticipating their questions or concerns before they even ask, making sure your own priorities and vision are clearly aligned with theirs. It's about building trust, showing you're a strategic partner, not just someone reporting number.
Building that partnership, okay? And after navigating all of these challenges, strategies, tough calls, what do executives point to as their biggest accomplishments? What do you consider your biggest leadership achievement?
The example shared was quite compelling. Turning around an underperforming business unit.
Ah, the turnaround story.
Yeah, and it wasn't just one magic bullet. It involved restructuring operations, really focusing on boosting team morale and putting in performance incentives. The result, a 60% increase in profitability within a year. That kind of comprehensive impact, that's a real measure of executive leadership.
60% in a year. Wow, that's definitely impactful. Finally, in a world that changes so fast, how do executives stay informed about industry trends? How do they keep their finger on the pulse?
It sounds like a mix of things, really, both formal and informal channels. Subscribing to the key industry publications, definitely. Attending conferences, not just for the talks, but for the networking and sidebar conversations.
Right, the informal learning.
Exactly. Joining executive forums to exchange ideas with peers, but also, critically, regularly meeting with actual customers and partners, getting that direct, unfiltered feedback from the market.
Grounding it in reality. Okay, and last question from the set. What specific metrics do they track regularly? What's on that core executive dashboard?
It boils down to the vital signs of the business, really. Things like revenue growth, profit margins, the financial health. Customer retention, are people sticking with you? Employee engagement, how's the internal climate? And key operational efficiency metrics like lead time or cost per unit, depending on the business. It's that complete picture for steering the ship.
Got it, the full dashboard.
And there you have it. We've kind of journeyed through this whole landscape of executive leadership, right?
Yeah.
From the big picture strategy and finance down to team dynamics and handling setbacks.
Absolutely, and that really shows the value of digging into these kinds of responses, doesn't it? There's so much more than just answers to interview questions. They really are like a master class in how these top leaders think, how they act, how they overcome obstacles.
Yeah, they reveal that complex blend of skills, the mindset, the practical application, everything that defines success at that level.
So thinking about the sheer breadth and depth of all these responsibilities we've covered and that constant need for learning and adapting that seems to run through everything, what does this tell us about the future of leadership?
That's a great question.
And maybe more practically for everyone listening, how can you start building these kinds of high-level skills no matter what your current role is? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In a world that's always changing, maybe that ability to just continuously learn, unlearn, and adapt, maybe that's the ultimate executive superpower.